Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk about part three of The Darkness That Comes Before. We've talked about the first two parts. We're doing a part each week. So we are here today with Katerina and Daniel. I'll let them introduce themselves. Katerina, you want to set us off?
Sure. I'm Katerina, and I'm rereading The Darkness with Steve. Um, yeah. I mean, what can I say? Yeah, this is not my. I'm not. This is not my first time reading this book, and it's been great so far. And I've greatly enjoyed our discussions of the first two parts.
And Daniel, our resident expert. You want to tell us about
Uh,
yourself?
I am also rereading, and I apologize for my bad microphone, but
Oh, that sounds fine. And Daniel, how many times have you read the series?
I've probably at least read all the books 3 times,
Oh wow,
may-
that's impressive.
maybe some more than that. I first read them 18 years ago now, probably.
Yes. So the first two parts. I know there was a lot. We talked a little bit before we started recording, but we talked about the first two parts being pretty dense, and the third part, I don't know if it's as dense as the other ones, but um, where do you both want to start out with this one?
Yeah, I agree that the first that this part is a lot less complicated. It's not as we don't have the politics, right? We've already sort of established the world. So I think what we do in this part, we do a lot of catching up with the characters we met in part one, right? With Esmanette and with the commune. And we also get a little bit more insight into Proas, who's going to become more important later on. Um, so I guess I would just start with Esminette and uh, her experience in Sumna that propels her yeah, that propels her to leave the city and search for a commune in the Holy War. Um, I think that's a pretty interesting place to start.
Yeah, the man who comes to see her in the beginning, you know, because it's this book, you know something's not quite right right away. Um, there's a few things. Of course, when he leaves, his the sound of his wings flapping. Like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like yeah, you already sort of know that it's probably the same man, or it's the Synthes from part one, right? The one that Inrao saw in um in the temple right before he died. Um, so you know the man's somehow connected to the consult, and we get any confirmation of that at the end of this part when he's talking to Cicellus, or the thing called Cicellus. I should be more precise.
yeah, that's when I knew for sure that something wasn't the thing they call a couple of the his seed was black that he leaves on her. You know that there's
That's suspicious.
yeah, it's
That's
great
pretty
to hear.
suspicious. But yeah, so he comes to Esmanet and he wants information about a Kamian, right? And he has an interesting way of obtaining that information. So like usually in a fantasy, when you want to get information of someone, you either try to trick them, or you might try to torture them and use pain to coerce them into telling you what you want to know. But this man, the architect, he uses pleasure to force Esmond to reveal everything she knows about Kamian, which is pretty interesting. We'll probably learn a little bit more about that as we go on. But I think that's very important to notice. Would you agree, Daniel?
Yeah, that was an interesting part, and SMNet struggles with it over the next couple chapters, just how much enjoyment she says she felt out of it, because I guess his object was to give her pure bliss to get his answers. And she just keeps finding herself thinking about it, which is weird, along her path towards the Holy War, until she breaks her sandal and has other things to think about.
Yeah. I did like learning more about her character in this section where she remembers the stories that the men that she's been with have told her, and the she's kind of learned about the world through them, through the people that she's been with, the men that have come to visit. Um, so I did like that part about her kind of using the knowledge that she gained during that time to survive on her journey. You learn a lot about her and kind of what makes her tick.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way he built her character in this part. Um, like you get a sense that, for example, she cares about a commune, she likes a commune, but at the same time, she also likes what he represents. Like she likes the idea of him being part of this like big world, and through him that she can sort of be part of the world as well. Um, and even when she leaves Sumna, she's sort of thinking about like how now like first person in 3Cs that's like seen the consult, right? Like she's been with this mysterious man, and she has evidence that the consult is back in 3Cs, and like it makes her feel important. Like she's part of this like big story that you usually only like read about, and she likes that feeling. She likes being important. She likes feeling that her life somehow matters, that she matters, and I think that's really interesting insight into her, and like as you said, like what makes her tick and what she wants in life. Like she's not satisfied with just being a prostitute in Sumna for the rest of her life. She wants something more.
Yeah, and that's kind of why she loved Akka, because he like brought the whole world to her, kind of. And the reason he like fled in the first place, because he was listening at the door. So his like rage at her still taking custom when he had enough money, he said. And then like her just knowing that he's gonna leave again, so she just has to keep taking custom. It's like a impossible love there. And then later you find out that the mandate aren't allowed to take wives anyways, so
Yes, that's true, and I also think that in a way, like she can take money from him. Well, first of all, because that would sort of change the nature of their relationship. Like she doesn't think of him as her as a customer, and if he gave her money, that would make her feel like he's just another man that she sleeps with for money. Um, but also, I don't think like the one of the other reasons why she doesn't want to take money from him, or why she doesn't want to stop taking other customers, is that like she wants to be independent of a commune, because like, she knows she can't depend on him, and she doesn't really want to depend on him, right?
Yeah, I think some of it too is that she struggles with her self worth and thinking that she doesn't deserve any better. Um, and there's some times when she just thinks that's what she deserves and doesn't uh, shouldn't strive for something more. I think she goes back and forth with that a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean the world kind of tells her that she's not worth it, or like she's a prostitute. She's damned. The scripture literally says that people should stone her upon seeing her. Um, that's what she deserves. So it's no wonder that she has low self esteem as a woman in this world and as a prostitute.
and that's what she finds happening to herself when she hits to the Holy War and her sandal breaks. She gets pestered by a group of little religious kids
Yeah.
who,
First,
who
first,
live by that scripture.
or do they? Like I was wondering. Like I'm not convinced that the reason, or that the only reason they decide to stone her is that they're so religious or so pious that they will follow the scripture to the letter. I think part of it is they just wanted to feel powerful, like wanted to like have being able to take out their frustration or anger, whatever, on someone who's weaker than them. Like that's kind of how I read it. Um, but I was also like super frustrated just by the fact that like women are not allowed to wear boots in the United Empire. I found that incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, that was funny. I know when I was 9, I didn't really think that deeply, but if I was with a group of mischievous kids, then just like it said in the book, there's that moment where things could just get out of hand, and oftentimes they did as a kid. I guess I had a rough childhood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of wonder if it's just because she's a woman who's alone, or is it because she's a prostitute, or a combination of both, that they thought they could do that to her, and that's that was a you kind of wonder, is it going to go a way that when she's going to befriend them and they're going to travel with her and they're going to kind of take her in, but of course I should have known better by now.
Yeah, you should have. You probably should have. But like she doesn't give up, like, right? She fights back. She throws stones at them. And then like finally they overpower her because there's just too many of them, and they're probably stronger, and then essentially the whole village comes out to participate in the stoning. But like she's a fighter. She doesn't give up. Which is something I like about her as well.
And that's when Sarsalis comes and saves her from the priest's stoning that he's sanctioned, I guess, by that point with his yelling.
Yeah. Literally saved by a knight in shining armor.
Who's probably, for those few pages, like the nicest, best character in the whole book to her until you like go into his brain, and then it's not so nice, not so human.
That was the like most abrupt transition that I've experienced in a while, when you're reading her thoughts and she's thinking like, "Oh, he's so nice to me and I feel so safe around him," and then you switch to Sarcellus's POV and he's like, "Oh, I want to have sex with her corpse." That really threw me off for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about like he's more excited by the thought of being where the architect has been or whatever. That's the part that excites him. But he's real nice to her and does appear to be her knight in shining armor still.
Yeah, but I think the implication of these, the way I read it, is also just the idea of making her hurt excites him. Um, there is something appealing to in violence for Sicellus.
Yet the architect makes his tools like that. Like the shrink are also that way, and so might whatever he is be.
I love how both of you try to be very careful with certain things, so you try to spoil things for me. Yeah, when he shows up and it's this knight in shining armor, you start to you immediately know this something's wrong, because it's not, that kind of thing doesn't happen
Yeah,
in
he
this world.
stumbled out of another book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not in this world, but like, you also like I mean, you kind of know that something's off with Sicellus because he was there in part one, when Enrao was being chased by the consul. Like he was there. We didn't exactly know if he was human or if he was working with the council, but he was watching, and he was one of the knights who attacked Inrao. So I had suspicion at least.
Yeah, it's you know something's not quite right. Um, but I did really like learning about Esme and kind of the way that, like you said, the way like what makes her tick.
Yeah, she's a great character. Definitely my favorite female character in the series. Uh, but also there are not that many of them.
Yeah.
So
Keep reading. Maybe you'll find something cool.
Well, I know in 2 weeks when we talk about part 4, I think we'll have another female character to talk about. But yeah, it was. We also learned about her daughter, Esme's daughter, that had died.
Oh, and she gives away the gold coin that she was given and flees before that because the girl reminded her of her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For that, I wondered why she would. I think it was because that the girl reminded her of her daughter, right? That's why she gave her the coin. It wasn't because she was just trying to be giving, or she didn't feel like she should keep it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess the way I read it was more that like she got that coin from the architect, and so I think like he paid her essentially to get information about a commune. So with her giving the money away, it was almost like her making a gesture to show that she didn't sell a commune. That's kind of how I interpreted it. But also, yes, there's this, like, she mentions her daughter as well, and then she gives it to this little girl. So maybe she did remind her of her daughter. And she felt like she was doing a good deed by helping. If if she couldn't have helped her daughter, then at least she could maybe help this girl.
Anything else from Esme that stuck out to you, Daniel, on your third read?
No, not really.
And of course, Akka keeps having nightmares. Um, and we spend a little bit of time with him, and we start learning. We're introduced to Proyas, and what led to the Vulgar Holy War, at least what was a contributing factor to it.
Yeah, we get a little bit of history of the history between Akami and Proyas, and we learned that Proyas was a student of Akamians, and for some reason, all of Akamian students go on to become priests, even though they've been tutored by sorcerer. I mean, Proyas does not go on to become a priest exactly, but he does become a very pious man, and probably one of the few people in 3Cs who've actually joined the Holy War for the official reasons that been given. So like he's actually one of the few people who genuinely wants to go to Shaima to free it from the Phantom so they can return to the hands of the Inrithi, and sort of honor the prophet of the Inrithi, which, like as we've seen, especially in part 2, most of the other factions involved in the Holy War don't really care about that. They don't care about Shaima or about it having its about it being an important place for their religion.
Yeah, and then we got to see them play Benjuka. He runs into Zin, his old mentor, like I guess his co-worker as a teacher to Proteus.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an appropriate way to describe the relationship.
They didn't like they didn't like each other initially because Zin is also a religious man, but I think he found a certain liking for Acamian. And the story about when Zin heard about him whipping Kelmamunis,
I think it's Kalmamumis.
Kelmamunis with an N at the end, Kelmamunis.
It's the
And
worst name in this book, I swear.
That's saying
so
something. Yeah.
he goes like 200 miles away, and eventually Proeus goes to him alone, and what does he say to him? He says that if he wants to condemn him, he should punish him, and throws him a wooden sword, and then just like keeps beating him and beating him until he keeps getting up. And then the next day, he says he learned a lesson, even though Zin just wanted to beat him up. That's what he said. That was like the funniest part in the chapter, that little conversation between Acamian and Zinimus.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And you can sort of get a sense from that conversation that they're very close to each other, or they have a very good rapport.
Yeah, it said that Zinimus like trained his body while Acamian trained his mind, and that's why Proeus was so powerful, was so smart.
Yeah, you
But it
can see they
doesn't
have.
say why he turned on the mandate, I guess, or on sorcery in general. But
Yeah, you can definitely tell they have a lot of admiration for Proyas as a person, as someone who's like very intelligent, very capable, but can get blinded by his fate oftentimes.
which is why he whipped Zinimus, or why he whipped Kelmamunis in the first place, because he was initially becoming blinded by his faith. And it's kind of weird that Zinimus stopped him, since he's also very faithful, but I guess he understands reality too. So
Yeah, also he's just older, so maybe he's accepted the fact that you have to make compromises, even even for your religion. Which is something they worry that Proas won't be able to do when he meets the emperor and starts negotiating about the holy war situation.
yeah, they say, are we gonna get the Judge Proeus or the
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 tactician.
statesman? Yeah, and I guess we're still waiting to see, but he's pretty mad. He needs to cool down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he sounded pretty frustrated in his POV section. Which like I understand, like if you joined the holy war because you want to because you want to avenge your gods, or and then you just end up having to make all these compromises and having to accommodate all these interests of the other parties which are not relevant to the cause at all. Like I mean I'd be frustrated as well.
I feel like I learned a lot about Acamian in this section because you see him from other viewpoints from the characters and how um, he kind of sneaks into the camp when he first gets there, and you kind of get that he's not very well respected by this group at least.
Yeah, well I mean he's a sorcerer, so just based on that they're not going to like him, especially if this is a holy war. And sorcerers are damned, sort of like the antithesis of the thesis of the holy war. But then you have the Scarlet Spires, which have joined the Holy War to help them conquer Shaima. So it's very intricate, and I'm not surprised that the religious individuals in the Holy War camp feel very conflicted about their position in the war.
Yeah, and at the same time, like Essenet in the previous chapter said that it's a lot of priests that are her customers. So, like, how pious is everybody really? Proeus, you can tell, is quite pious because he thinks just like Akemi, the fact that he was taught by Akemian makes him like dirty in a way. At least he questions whether that's like why God is mean to him.
Yeah, and like even when you think of Cercellus, like he's the first knight commander of the Shriel Knights, something like that. He has like a crazy title, but essentially he's like a warrior priest, right? If I'm not mistaken. And then he saves Esmenet from another priest and then takes her into his tent and just lets her live there. So what does that even say about the church and about the clergy?
So, Sarcellus, it does treat. Seems like he's at least treats Esme well enough to where she struggles on whether or not she should um, stay with him or not, or I think she's still determined to get to warn Camion, but I think she kind of goes back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like he's seducing her with attention and with luxury, and like you can tell it's working. Like she likes the feeling, like she likes the way he makes her feel. Like her, like I think she says something like he made her like he was really curious about her life. Like he made her feel like her experiences were interesting and valid, and she really liked that. And she also, I mean, she also like doesn't mind the fact that now she has two servant girls and they make her food and she sleeps in like satin cushions. Um, which tells you something about Esmenet. Like as much as she cares about Akamian, she's also susceptible to the material things.
Yeah, she's like weighing comfort and safety with loyalty and love.
Which I think is legitimate, especially considering where she comes from, like her background, the fact that she spent most of her life living in poverty, um, and people, like everyone around her, disrespects her because she's a woman and because she's a prostitute. Like I mean, I can't really blame her for wanting something more, wanting to make her life more comfortable, I guess.
Because she's been through a lot. And then it's even Sarcellus that I think tells her that a mandate can never marry another. Which how he knows that, who knows? He said another thing that was crazy. He said, "Oh, pity that you're not a man. If you were a man, you wouldn't need to make teachers of everyone who used you," which is pretty crazy. So he's like a legitimate good spy compared to Acamian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
Kamin's yeah, even when he's trying to spy on the Scarlet Spires and then all his informants desert him because they're too scared. They're too scared of the Elizarius and his entourage. Um,
He does almost catch the mandate though. That when he was walking in the market trying to buy food because he decided he wanted to be a cook, get everyone's respect, just being a cook for a while. And
yeah.
then he saw someone following him and tried to wait in hiding for him, and it didn't happen. And then he chased him down, and by the time he got to him, it wasn't him. But then Sarcellus says that it was him, and that he was able to change faces before he could get to him. A guy named Mengai, I think, is what they called the other guy. Something like that.
Yeah, it's first, and it's a first indication, or maybe a confirmation that not everyone, these creatures are able to change forms, and then maybe not everyone we've met is who they say they are. That's a thought.
Yeah, it's the first time you see the possibility of maybe someone's face not being the same, which is interesting for the rest of the book.
Yeah, and it kind of begs the question, like, if the thing called Cercellus is a thing, was there a Cercellus before that, or was Cercellus always just a thing? That's something you can ponder about.
And I think at the very, very end, the Cynthia says something like, "Show me your true face" to him, and it says that his face. Let's see what it says. The thing called Sarsalis sensed the fist of his expression slacken, then part. Whatever that means.
I have no idea.
It seems like they can change appearance pretty quickly too, because he had one's face, and then once Kamian caught up to him, he had a different face. So it doesn't seem like it takes a whole lot. I mean, it seems like it's not like a long process, which makes it more intriguing.
Yeah.
Same with the Synthes, because it had apparently been with Estinet and then in an instant just flew away somehow.
that was really creepy. And it flew away at the beginning. And the when they do get to the camp and she's looking for Kamian, her thoughts while she's looking for him and kind of going back and forth was another great moment for her character, I thought, in this part.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes her more complex and nuanced. Like, I like the fact that she's not just in love with the Kami and leaves Sumna because she wants to find him and she's worried about him. Like, she has also some selfish motivation for why she leaves Sumna and why she joins the Holy War. It definitely makes her more interesting, more complicated as a character.
And everyone who seems to come across her knows that she's like not your typical like prostitute or whatever. She's something more. I think even the Synthes says like, "Oh, she was a 12 copper whore," because at first, at the very beginning, she asks him for 12 copper and he like gets mad about it. Says she's not even worth 3 because she's so old. But at the end, she realizes, or the Synthes realizes, that even she's like keeping stuff from Sarsalis, even though Sarsalis has done everything to have her open up and talk about the consult so they could realize she was at risk, but she's just keeping her cards real tight to her chest.
Yeah. And we also get, just to talk a little bit more about Akami, and we also get an idea of like how he can sometimes behave in a pretty self-destructive way. Like when we meet him in this part, he's learned about Inrao's death and he's sort of blaming himself, regardless of whether it was a suicide or a murder. Like, he feels like he's responsible for that, regardless. And he starts drinking and he starts doing drugs, and he keeps reading books that he doesn't enjoy. Um,
Yeah, it was interesting the way he talked about like what the drugs did to his dreams. I think initially he says that when he like gets drunk, the dreams like aren't as memorable. They're more of a blur, but the emotions are way more powerful as like a drunk person might be, way more emotional and less coherent of the events. And then when he's doing, I think it says opium, he says that the lines between the dreams and the realities were like blurred. Didn't know like when he was stepping in and out of sleep.
yeah, which can be pretty scary, like considering that the mandate, like they're already like not always living in the reality. Like they're living with one footstep into the past anyway. Um,
And the most powerful individual sorcery that's out right now. So a lot of times when a Kimian reflects on what he could do, he just talks about how he could just bring entire walls down and kill everybody. But we haven't seen it at this point. Just some simple cants around his tent to keep prying eyes out, I guess.
yeah, I mean it's an interesting juxtaposition when you consider how strong he is, or at least how strong he says he is, and then how worthless he often feels, or the doubt that fills him. Um, it's interesting to see how someone so powerful can also be so insecure.
Yeah, he should stay off the heavy drugs probably before he says swathas in real life.
Um, what else was in this part before I misspeak again?
They talked about the game of Benjuka, which I've like always been interested in. And I actually like played a game for the first time the other day where the rules could change like mid game,
Hmm.
which it says can happen in Benjuka at any point. Kind of makes it different from most other games you play.
Hmm.
And then Camian loses to Zinimus. Or maybe it seemed like he thought he was going to win at the end, and he just like forfeit because he didn't want to play anymore and wanted to let Zinimus think he won. Maybe it's hard to tell right at the end, but I think they're
Yeah.
still like playing the same game currently. So
Yeah, I kind of understood it as him deciding that like it's the game doesn't matter, that he kind of has to focus on the reality or the politics in front of him. um that playing with pieces of stone is somehow ridiculous when you think of like the scheme of things, the context in which they find themselves in. um but I mean I like the way that he compares the game to life and then to other games. um and I kind of like the fact that he's like, if I understand it correctly, like the idea of Benjuka is that like unlike games where you know the rules and then you can make your decision based on the rules, you know, in Benjuka just the variables are, there's so many variables that you can't really ever predict everything. You can't predict like how the environment is going to change, so you sort of have to make calculated, like you have to kind of calculate the probability of your chases. I don't know if that's a way of, if that's a good way of reading the game, but that's how I kind of understood it.
I'd say that's pretty good.
Or like I don't know if there's a way that you can at least try to estimate how the, like, you know, the rules are going to change, but if there's a way to like approximate or predict how they're going to change. I don't know if that's possible within the game.
Must be. It seems like there's just better people than others at it. So Confis is
Mm.
probably one of the better people.
So we've heard. And yeah, Kampf is definitely is good at adapting to the situation around him. So I'm not surprised he's good at Benjuka.
In theory, maybe Snare could have been better at Benjuka, because if his tribe would have listened to him, they would still be out there, and the Slivni wouldn't all be dead, or the Skilvendi wouldn't all be dead, and they would probably win. Because he knew what they were planning. They wanted them to charge in, and if they would have just waited them out, they would have maybe found out that there were mages, or just starved them out eventually. By taking out the supply routes. He was in their land. But
Yeah,
Snare was the only one who said anything, and they were already conspiring to get him killed, and thinking they were going to win anyways. So
I would pay to see a game of Benjuka between Nayor and Comfes. That would be legendary.
yeah, it would be fun to watch. I don't even know the rules, and that's just still watch it. Guess it's like when I watched Alpha Go play that professional Go player. I watched it, but I'm not sure of the rules of Go. It's still good.
Yeah, sometimes I watch professional chess players play online, even though I have like little to no understanding of chess, and it's still a lot of fun. So I'm sure this would be as well.
What's that game in the Witcher that was a whole separate game for it? It kind of reminded me of that.
Gwen?
Gwen. Yeah, I
Gwen?
kind of wondered if someone ever thought about making Benjuka into a game like that, or if we know enough to make it.
I don't know if we currently know enough.
Yeah, I'm only speaking from the first book, so I wasn't sure if there's more details in the later books.
There's lots of games of Benjuka that get played, I think, in this book, because it's like, what, a 2,000-year-old game? It's kind of like their chess. It survived the apocalypse somehow, so
Must be good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And let's see. Anything else?
Not a ton. I think the only other thing that I had written down was that they're spying on Camion, which I think we've kind of already suspected before that. And the thing called Cicellus is with um, another smaller creature with wings, and that's kind of connects the beginning. You hear the wings flapping at the end. It's confirmed it's the same creature. There's a smaller creature there.
Yeah, and we already know that, or we already saw that that creature in part one with Enrao in the temple, right? So I think it's safe to assume that it's the same person or same being.
Or is it?
He is the
Maybe.
architect. The architect sounds like something that would be a really cool name back if you lived in a fantasy world.
That'd be the best name, right? The Architect. I mean,
You gotta be an OG. You're the OG if you're the architect.
I just immediately started thinking of the architect from The Matrix.
yeah, me too.
But art.
No, if the Matrix was out by the time these books came out. They definitely weren't.
The Matrix is what, like 98, 99?
I think the first one is 99.
Oh, was it? So maybe they were out.
Oh yeah, this is 2003, right?
something like that. But I think Baker started writing these books much earlier than that. So I'm not implying that one took inspiration from the other. It's just the association I had with the name architect. That's it.
A big part of Baker's argument is that all we're always doing is stealing information from each other. Every word is but a repetition of a word you've already heard. Every statement, just a statement that's already been said. So you hear a
Which
lot of
room?
comparisons between this and Dune, like just everywhere, which there are comparisons. And Baker has said his favorite books were Dune and his favorite author's Stephen Erickson, so
I mean, I haven't read Dune, but from what I know about it, I can certainly see some inspiration that Baker's taken from it, especially in the character of Kellis. But we haven't seen him in a while, so probably we'll save that conversation for another time.
Yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about with him in the next two parts after this one. Yeah, anything else either of you can think of?
only one person signed the indenture so far, and I forgot who it was, but the rest of them have basically just flat out denied it. Kind of said maintenance crazy for not saying anything yet. They've debated storming the Capitol and just taking the provisions. Right now, it's kind of just all up in the air, and a lot of it rides on Proyas because he's like been made kind of the leader of the faithful at this point. Seems like.
Yeah, I think. Well, Kalmamoon is has signed D. He signed the indenture, but he's dead, unfortunately. But the Scarlet Spires have also signed because they don't care about the territory. They just want to avenge on the Kashorim and annihilate them. So they've signed the indenture.
They only wanted all the information about the Sishorum, I think. That's all they asked for in return.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Openly.
Yeah, but I'd be curious to know what Maintanet is thinking, because you only saw him briefly, and it seemed like he had the Holy War under control, but now we're not so sure.
That's a good point.
We've seen him briefly, and he like had the ability to know Akamian was a sorcerer, and now he's grieving for the loss of the vulgar Holy War and doesn't want to be bothered.
Yeah, but I mean, also officially, also the Emperor is grieving for the loss of the Holy War or the vulgar Holy War. So what does that actually tell us?
Yep, you don't really know till you get in their head. If you get in their head.
Yeah.
Oh, and it seemed there was a part where Akamian was talking about his dreams and saying that he tried to read, what was it, the religious books. And he talked about how like the lies in it just made him furious because he relived the second apocalypse, and so he knew that the truth wasn't in the books. But then sometimes he cried because the truth was in the books.
Yeah, I really like that part when he talks about his reading, and also when he says something along the lines of just how like the poetry he read 10 years ago just doesn't make him feel the same way that it did now that it did back then. I also felt that because age really does change your perception of certain books or certain pieces of art.
I guess that's why I'm rereading this book to see how my perception changes.
Yeah. Good point. Well, I think you started off saying there's not a whole lot to talk about in this part, and here we are, almost an hour later, still talking about it. So it's that kind of book though that there's a ton in there, even when it doesn't seem like there necessarily is.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a page by page breakdown almost, and there would still be a lot to talk about. But I think we've covered like all the important parts. At least I don't really see anything else in my notes that we've missed.
I wonder what this book would look like with footnotes. You could like see people's names, and it would describe where you know them from below, and then like 500 pages in, when you read someone's name, it just tells all the times you missed them before.
I mean, that sounds too much like reading Wikipedia.
Sounds like House of Leaves, is it?
House of Leaves was rough. All of his books, I can't remember his name. I read one called In Revolutions too, and he loves footnotes, that guy.
Daniel
Danielewski?
Danielewski? Is it Daniel?
I
Mark.
don't-
Nothing to bother me.
Yeah, me too.
Mm.
I don't know where
Mark
the book is
Mark
either.
Danielewski.
Yeah,
That's
those are
quite the read.
interesting books. Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I mean, at least in this one, you have the appendices, which can be helpful, I think, especially if you're going through the book for the first time.
Yeah, you know, I found myself. I'm glad you mentioned that. I found myself going to the back of the book more often after the first two parts to just kind of whenever I wasn't quite sure who someone was or where they were from, I would go back and go to a quick rundown of the different factions or different people who they're associated with. So it's pretty helpful.
Yeah, I think part 1 and part 2 introduce most of the players in this book, at least. So yeah, it makes sense that by part 3 you probably need to freshen up on who was the first person you met in chapter 1, who just briefly mentioned and then didn't appear for the next 200 pages. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like the main character of the series disappears for like 300 pages in this book.
Yeah, those get significantly bigger as the books go on to the appendixes, just more detail. More characters, more detail, more world building. I guess there's a Camian's map in it as well that he started trying to figure out who's playing who and who's on whose side.
Yeah, I thought that was neat too.
Yeah, there's the mind map, and you also get a map of the 3 Cs, which I think is pretty helpful. And you also get if I remember well, you also get the pronunciation of the names of the like 5 or 6 main characters, which can be helpful as well. Although, you know, everyone has their own pronunciation, and I'm not gonna shame anyone for that. I'm sure I get a lot of them wrong as well.
I feel attacked.
No, that wasn't the intention.
Well,
I still
me
managed to
too.
butcher them. Yeah.
Names are what you make them in your head.
Yeah.
It's the words you can't mix up.
Well, can either of you think of anything else from this part?
No, I think we covered it well. I guess the Synthes tells Sarsalis not to kill Esmnet, even though it really wants to. Is that what we're calling? Is that his pronoun?
It, yeah,
I
The,
haven't thought of that.
the thing called Sarsalis,
yeah.
it thing. He really wants to kill Esmnet, it seems like, but can't. And maybe even Acadian, but can't, because whoever the architect is says not to.
Yeah.
Which
Wait.
I can't remember what Maithanet said to Proyas about Acadian. Do you guys remember? Was it to let him be but don't talk to him? Something like that? Just like don't fraternize with him but don't harm him?
I think it was kind
I
of
don't
just
know if
keep
he
your distance.
says
Yeah,
anything. Um,
He definitely asked Proyas who that was, how you know the schoolman.
yeah, I do remember him. I do remember him asking uh about a commune, but
Maybe he
yeah,
doesn't. It doesn't say what he told him after that.
yeah. I
So
mean, the chapter literally ends with Maithanet asking Proas, "Who was that man, that sorcerer, who dared pollute my presence?" So I don't think we actually know what Maithanet thinks of a commune being there in Sumna or in the Hagurna, at least for now.
except that he's let him live, I guess, and that Proyas is now not talking to him since he's reached the capital.
Yes.
I guess we'll see next part in 2 weeks.
yeah. A quick note for anyone listening week to week: we will be taking next week off. We were doing some traveling, so we'll take a break next week. We'll be back in 2 Fridays, or not? You know, the 26th. So I think. So for anyone that's following along that way, it'll be a couple of weeks, but we'll be back to talk all things part 4. I'm sorry,
Which
yeah,
I
26th. Yeah.
yeah. Which a part 4 I haven't reread yet, but as far as I remember, it's pretty dense. So we might need the week to just prepare.
Yeah, part 4 is a lot happens in part 4. So kind of it came at a good time.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else either of you wanted to mention?
I mean, we do get the first meeting between Confis and Proyas, sort of the two great minds of the Holy War, and they don't get on. Like it doesn't seem like they're going to be friends, the two of them. At least that's the impression I have from that encounter.
Proyas just kind of tried to do the cold shoulder, no shake hands. I'm cooler than you, but at the end, he thinks that he lost the argument in front of all of his people. I guess it wasn't even an argument, just the first interaction.
Yeah.
Almost like a showdown, almost, but a subtle showdown.
The first move of Benjuka. He just
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah, it's just the opening. Yeah, and then Confis is sort of above that. Like he does not care about Proyas giving him the cold shoulder.
Yeah, he already knows he's going to be going on the Holy War, and he has his sights set on just seemingly becoming the most badass general in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he is already the god of his own universe, so might as well be that he become the god of the other people's universe as well.
Oh, that reminds me too of when Zinimus is talking to Acamian and they're playing Benjuka and they're like admiring how smart Ixerius is. Even though, from our point of view, last part, we knew he just kind of stumbled into this great game he played, or the great move. So they're both thinking he's like real savvy and real smart right now.
Yeah, it's true. I haven't thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. I still don't think that Xerxes is completely dumb, but he definitely looks a lot smarter from the outside than he actually is.
Confis says that even he was like baffled by this move because it was so smart, even though he's already capable of beating him at Benjuka when he was 10. So it was like seemingly a rare move for Xerius to do something Convis couldn't expect or foresee. So whatever it was, it worked for Xerius up till this point. But it was just interesting to see like the unreliable narrator. They're both deceived by him and thinking that he's like one of the smartest people at the table right now. When Confis doesn't think so, his own mother doesn't think so.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see how the Icurates are kind of despised by all the other nobles and kings, while they themselves think of themselves as this sort of like godlike family that has a right to this huge empire to the east. Um, while everyone else thinks that they're just deceitful and impious and cunning and should not be trusted ever, which is justified from what we know about them. Um,
This is true. We'll see if that changes over time.
I love how both of you are so cryptic about this kind of thing. Cool.
yeah, it's pretty hard to keep track of what we already know from what we read and what comes after.
It's hard for me, and I've only read this one book, so it must be really tough when you're so far into the series.
It's been a long time since I've read it, so the overall arc and a lot of the things I found most interesting I still remember, but as I read it, all the details are new, so I'm able to separate pretty well to this point, as long as I don't start reading ahead, and it might get trickier. I think I've done pretty good at this point, not to give any spoilers though.
It's tough. It's tough to not read ahead a little bit. I'm holding off on the second book, but it was tough to not keep reading this one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that once you start Warrior Prophet, you won't be able to stop yourself. I'm a little bit concerned because it really flows.
That's what I've heard, is that the Warrior Prophet is more linear. And it's easier to get through. Or it's a faster read, I guess. Is what I've heard.
I would agree with that description. Yeah, it's a lot of people's favorite.
It was good. It is good.
It will be good again.
There is a lot less shooting from one side of the world to the other because there's a holy war going on and most players are involved. So.
It's going to be good. Awesome. So, excuse me, we have 2 more parts to go in this book, but they're pretty big, so lots to discuss in the coming weeks. But thanks everyone for hanging out and listening to us talk about part 3, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk part 4. That should be a fun one.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
That'll be good stuff.
Me as well.
Awesome. So we'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Katerina or Daniel, did you want to? I know both of you are very active on social media, but was there anything that you wanted to pass on?
So active. Yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out to me, talk about these books or other books, you can find me on the Patreon forum. or you can follow me on Instagram at the errant, if you like.
Cool.
I'll just say wait till the end of the books, and I think we're going to do a live stream, so just ask me then or forget the questions and don't ask me.
Okay. Awesome. So thanks again, everyone, for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.